Well, my dog Ranger here, he's ready to go. We've been out here for an hour and a half doing some videos, hanging out, and he loves coming out to these trails. But there's this limit he has. He's like, okay, I've been here for a while. I'd like some water, I'd like some food. Can we get out of here? Can I go home and take a nap? Maybe he sounds like me a little bit. Well, I wanted to tell you about the story, and it happened to my kids. And they were up at a college, or it was, I think, a high school retreat with their church. And they came up here to Colorado, and it was up at Estes Park. They were there for the whole week, and so one of the things they always do is they go for a hike. Now, fortunately, before this hike, I had gotten them both set up with these Osprey day packs. And Caleb has a Talon 22. My daughter has the Tempest 20. They're both Osprey packs and they're day packs. Well, I set them up with first aid kits, and they both were into, I know my son, he was a lifeguard. They actually filled up their first aid kits with more stuff than what came with it. And so they were conscious of things like that, and I've been out with them hiking and backpacking, so they're aware of a lot of things in the outdoors. They're not experts on things, but they are pretty solid when they go out. Well, they had their day packs, and I've got my Talon 22 sitting right here. But they're out there, and they went up to about a 13,000 foot peak somewhere, I think in the Rocky Mountain National Park, because Estes Park sits right there at the base of how you get into the Rocky Mountain National Park. If you ever get a chance to visit Estes Park, it's a beautiful town, sitting there right at the entrance to the Rocky Mountains. This beautiful downtown area, shops and things, a lake and marina. It's a great place to go visit. They have things they can choose there to do their activities, but one of them was going up and hiking, and so it was a day hike. And they go up there, and there was a group, I'm going to say 20 people or so. Caleb and Grace were the only two that were ready. They both had their day packs, and they had their water, and they had first aid kits, and they were the only two with backpacks. Even the leaders of the group, maybe one of the leaders was prepared, but nobody else was prepared. And my kids told me the story about this. And so they get up there and they get to the peak, and all of a sudden they come across somebody, another hiker in a different party or by themselves. And they had fallen and kind of cracked their head open. Now, it wasn't cracked open and things weren't oozing out, but they were bleeding pretty bad. Fortunately, they were ready, and they had, because they put gauze and things in there for bigger injuries. And then a nurse was up there and part of a different group. And so between the nurse wasn't even prepared. The nurse had the knowledge and experience, but my kids were the only ones who had the ability to bind up his wound. They treated him, the nurse was helping, my kids had their first aid kits out. So this guy, whose name was Guy, they were able to get his head bandaged up and stop the bleeding, and then they actually then helped him get off that mountain. And the kids play it down a little bit that, it wasn't a horrible situation, but he was bleeding profusely. I mean, I wouldn't say like blood wasn't gushing out, but it was still a bad situation. And if he were by himself, probably would have still gotten off the mountain. Somehow he would have been able to stop the bleeding. But because they were prepared and there was also a nurse there, it made the trip down the mountain and the help that he was able to get a lot better. And I see this all the time here in Colorado, where people go out, they're up here visiting, and some people just even live here. I can't tell you how many people live in the Denver area and the Colorado Springs area, and they never get out to the mountains. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, not even to Pikes Peak, not even in the Front Range. A lot of people just sit here at home and watch TV, or they'll take a local place like this here, which is at the base of the Rocky Mountains, but it's an open space trail. But they're not prepared. Will they even have water? I'm telling you, I've been out one place, and it was down by it was down by Pagosa Springs, and it was a really beautiful river down there. But the amount of people that showed up with no water, and they're just with their kids, and they just have their tennis shoes and the shorts on, whatever. And so, it's a nice day, and I guess they're fairly prepared. And the trail wasn't super hard, but you go out 5-6 miles or so, and all of a sudden you're realizing you want water, or there's an accident, and you don't have any way to take care of that accident, or whatever the injury is. I really want everybody to just think before they go out. When you go out, whether it's a backpacking trip, camping trip, or a hike or day hike, and you think, hey, it's gonna be quick, we're gonna be in and out in a couple hours, nothing bad's gonna happen. Are you sure there's no rattlesnakes around you? I've seen 2 recently here in Colorado. Are you having any issues with altitude sickness? Have you taken enough water? Have you drank enough water ahead of time? So when you come up here to Colorado, you should be hydrating a week ahead of time, at least 3 days ahead of time. My daughter was in a search and rescue team in Gunnison, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was the mountain search and rescue team. I'll have a screenshot of that up there. So she worked with them for about 2 years, and altitude sickness was a huge issue for them. Or, you know, it was being hydrated. Because if you're not hydrated, then all these other things start to happen, and you'll get nauseous, you'll get altitude sickness, you can't function as well. And for them, they had to move quickly, they had to be able to operate at higher altitudes, because they're between Gunnison and Crested Butte, and so the Gunnison Valley is where they operated at here in Colorado. And you got to be ready for lots of things, from lost people to injuries, and my daughter's told me a few things. She was also working to become a firefighter. She was going through the academy there with the Gunnison Fire Department. She didn't see a lot of the things, or anything really, because she was still training, but the stories they were telling her, I don't even want to hear anymore. It's because, you know, they deal with horrible stuff. I mean, rollovers on the mountain. What is that mountain you go over? The Monarch Pass. So that pass, it goes up around 14,000 feet, and it gets a lot of snow, and they have rollovers, crashes, and there's things happening up there all the time. Anyway, again, it's all about being prepared. But in this case, they were prepared because they had these backpacks, and they had the first aid kits, and even more stuff in those first aid kits. So always think, if you think nothing's going to happen, something probably will. And hopefully nothing ever does, but be ready. Have water at the very least. And I would say, you know, you probably should have the ability to communicate. All right, thanks for joining me here for another short story in these podcasts I'm coming up with here, because I'm really starting these out to tell you about things that have happened in my life, to get you thinking about how to be prepared with, whether it's a situation with altitude sickness, a first aid, getting lost in the snow, bit by a rattlesnake. I mean, there's so many things. And I'm not even this outdoorsman that's doing these crazy things out here. I mean, I'm probably more of a typical outdoors person who's, you know, I'm not mountain climbing, and I'm not going up to Everest, and I'm not going down these rapids with these huge waterfalls and stuff. I'm not doing that kind of stuff. I'm just going out on these hikes and enjoying Colorado and other places. So think about it, be ready, enjoy the outdoors. I'll see you back out here in Colorado at Outdoor Emergency Tech in the next video.